Hey guys, I do not have a decent intro for this yet. Okay, so Hazbin Hotel. What a show. Personally, I like it, but it does have its fair share of issues, though this is not a video critiquing its writing. In all fairness, I'm not a professional writer, so I can't criticize these professionals that heavily. And in all fairness, the writing could use some work. That's why I've decided to make an overhaul/rewrite of the story and characters, starting with none other than the King of Hell himself, or the big boss of Hell himself if we're quoting songs here. Anyways, as a disclaimer, I would like to say that personally I have not read the Bible in its entirety, and I'm definitely not the most knowledgeable on the subject of Christianity, but I did try to do as much research as I could online about the topic, so I'll try my best. If I say anything devastatingly incorrect, please correct me in the comments, and much appreciated. So let's start. So, the canon design. It's not bad. I mean, it's okay on its own. It just doesn't really give the vibe of the King of Hell that much, to be honest. I don't hate it, of course. Lucifer is definitely one of my favorite characters, and is one of the better designs. He just has some room for improvement. I mean, he just looks like a guy in a suit, which is almost everyone in Hell, to be honest. The crown helps a little in identifying him, but it's kind of hidden and overshadowed by the snake on his hat. His suit is fine, but it doesn't exactly give the ringmaster vibe that is stated he is supposed to possess. To be honest, just adding a ringmaster's shoulder pads, or epaulettes I believe is how it's pronounced, would help immensely, as in the finale. Lastly, his color palette. The white works well as a suit, and does show some decent contrast against the red backgrounds in the show. Look at these examples. Compared to all the other characters, he stands out well against the backgrounds, while others, Puff Cough, Alistair, blend in. Even in scenes when he's not the focus, his colors really do help him stand out, and I have to applaud that part of his design. I personally did not make his colors contrast to Hazbin backgrounds that much, but if I had my own version of the show, I wouldn't make the backgrounds that red anyway. Also, him being completely white, the color of the place that banished him, seems a bit out of character. That's why I opted for white and gold accents instead of them being his main color, as a nod to his divinity. And the other issue with this is that his face and clothing are the exact same color. There is some distinction, but his face should not be the same shade as his suit. If you were to blur it, he just looks like a completely white shape with no distinction between his face, hat, and suit. Yet somehow, with the extremely monotonous seeming design, his design has 18 colors in total. Maybe more if I counted incorrectly. I'm not a master of design or animation, but that definitely seems like far too many, especially when some are so similar in hue. So, my design. I tried to change him as little as possible so he was still recognizable. I also think the original design was pretty okay anyways. So I gave him horns. It seems pretty self-explanatory why I did so. It just makes him look more demonic and like the King of Hell, in my opinion. I kept the top hat because ringleaders often wear them, but I made it less cluttered so the crown is more obvious. I gave him a coat with shoulder pads to lean more into the ringleader aesthetic. I gave him an apple bow tie and moved the snake to his staff and pants to keep with the symbolism. From what I remember of biblical lore, the snake in the Garden of Eden was technically not specified to be Lucifer, and it was a connection made because in a different part of the Bible where it describes him as a great serpent, possibly in reference to Leviathan. But I did integrate that he was the serpent from the garden into my lore, which I shall get into later on. Also, I think there is something in the Bible about his hair being blonde in heaven, yet red when he was cast down to hell. But to be honest, I had no idea how to make that work in his color palette. I did make his hair a bit more darker and a bit more orange than in his heaven form. And he does still have wings, but all of them besides one set were ripped off when he was cast to hell. Because he was still an angel, but he wasn't allowed to associate himself with the higher angels anymore. His remaining pair also have some burnt areas due to his fall. And yes, I did make him purple. I'm aware that virtually all of Hazbin's world is red, and it's set in pride, so pride should be red. Though biblically, purple is the color of pride, and red is the color of wrath. So I did technically shift it around a little to accommodate for that, but Lucifer is the king of hell anyway, and purple is the color of royalty, so I believe it fits a bit better. So, lore time. In biblical lore, there is a hierarchy of angels. The mainly accepted system, from what I could gather, is, and sorry for mispronunciation, seraphim, cherubim, ophanim, eralim, dominions, virtues, principalities, archangels, and angels. In the Bible, Lucifer is regarded as being close to God and among the highest ranking angels. The only angels in this hierarchy which are that high are the seraphim. Though Lucifer is commonly interpreted as a cherub or an archangel, him being an archangel personally does not make sense to me, as they are rather low on this hierarchy. But his being a cherub also makes as much sense as his being a seraph, in my opinion, so I decided that he gets to be both. In Christianity, I believe it is said that God made everything for a reason and everything fits into God's plan. But I did have an idea. What if God made a small mistake? I know that may sound absurd, as God is interpreted most of the time to be free from error. But I'd like to make it clear that this is not actual biblical lore. This is a fun little story I made up. If anything about this lore goes against anyone's beliefs, I deeply apologize. I'd just like to make it clear that my interpretation does not directly connect to actual Christianity and is just an adaptation. So Lucifer is a cross between a cherub and a seraphim. No one in heaven knew exactly what to do with him, as they didn't know where in the rigid hierarchy he fell. Because he was partially a seraphim, he does have the 6 wings and is regarded as being an extremely high-ranking angel, though he does hide his third pair so as to not stand out heavily among the cherubim. Though as a cherub, he is given duties of a cherub and the uniform of a cherub. I landed on this conclusion due to a few reasons. So, seraphim in the Bible have been described as burning serpents. Seraphim are also beings of pure light. This ties back to the fact that Lucifer is the morning star and is a serpent in the Garden of Eden. Because as a seraphim, he is easily able to take a snake-like form. Isaiah used the term seraph to describe a fiery flying serpent. There's also this whole thing with his position in the hierarchy and his relation to God. I also decided that he should be a cherub, because cherubim are connected with knowledge, similar to the apple of knowledge that Adam and Eve ate. The cherubim also guarded the Garden of Eden, which is how I believe he was able to easily sneak in, as he was one of the guards, being the duties of a cherub I previously mentioned. But as a half-breed angel, or however you want to say it, he always felt like an outcast, and was considered by others and himself the first mistake that God ever made. This is why he connected with Lilith. So, the Garden of Eden. Lucifer was a cherub guarding the gates when he saw Lilith for the first time. He was immediately enraptured due to the fact that angels in my version do look humanoid to some regard, but they try their hardest to hide that part of themselves, as it is very unbecoming to those who do look the most human-like. Most angels look like an avian-human hybrids, becoming more humanoid on the highest and lowest ends of the hierarchy. It is an angel custom to always cover your face and most of your body, so seeing someone so free and different was new to him. Lilith also somewhat felt like an outcast, because she was made to be Adam's equal, but he didn't want to accept that. Adam wanted a wife he could have superiority over, which is why Eve was created from his rib. Adam felt incredibly unsatisfied with Lilith, and she felt like, to some extent, if she wasn't right for Adam, she wasn't following God's plan. When Lucifer entered the garden out of immense curiosity, he met Lilith. They became close over time and eventually devised a plan together. Lucifer, as a seraph, had more free will than other angels, but also had the knowledge that was associated with cherubs. He wanted to share this power with the new human creatures he found so fascinating. This is why he tempted Eve to eat the apple. He believed it would improve humanity and Adam's way of thinking. If he had the knowledge, he wouldn't need to treat Lilith poorly, and Lilith could try to be his wife again, and fulfill God's plan. This, sadly, did not work out. Adam obviously did not change in the slightest, and Lucifer was banished for his wrongdoings. Lilith, not having eaten the apple, became much less human as her time in hell went on, causing her to distance herself from Lucifer and eventually be part of why she left. So, design and lore-wise, I think that's it. I apologize if this may be a bit longer than I intended, given I rewrote his entire lore, and fairly not the best quality writing. This is my first time doing this, and I hope I did an okay job. I already made designs of Vox, Alistair, and Charlie, and those will hopefully be out soon, so stay tuned if you're interested in seeing those. Thanks and bye!